on a Monday night in Atlanta here in mid-January. Marcus Freeman in Notre Dame and Ryan Day at Ohio State. Breaking it down, and Notre Dame comes out of the gate and a remarkable drive where Riley Leonard, time and time again on fourth down, moved the pile himself, lands on the football, but still got enough gas in the tank to take it to the paint. 18 plays, the longest drive in a BCS College Football Championship game. Notre Dame up 7-0. Leonard landed on the ball. It hurts. Maybe you puke. It's fine. You keep it going. And Ohio State didn't blink. That drive ate up more than 2/3 of the first quarter. So Ohio State gets their hands on the football, and what a play design. Chip Kelly in his bag tonight. There's Jeremiah Smith, the incredible freshman who walks it in. You can see Christian Grace trying to alert the Notre Dame defense of what's coming, and there's nobody in a blue uniform to slow him down. After Notre Dame gave the ball right back, Quinshon Judkins into the end zone, and 2 consecutive drives result in 2 consecutive touchdowns for Ohio State. 2 minutes to play in the second. Notre Dame has been great in the middle 8, as they call it, and Ohio State flipped the script on him in this case, as here Will Howard finds Carnell Tate 12 for 12 to start the game, the most consecutive completions to start a national championship game all time. Can they cash it in with 7? They can. Howard finds time and finds a wide open Judkins in the end zone. And Ohio State's the first team to start a national championship game with 3 consecutive touchdown drives since Bama in 2013. That was against Notre Dame. LeBron in the building and all the Buckeyes fans loving what they are seeing. The middle 8 includes the first 4 of the third as well. And what an emphatic statement right out of the locker room. Ryan Day said in his interview right before they went in, we got to have a great drive to start the second half. 70 yards from Judkins to start the drive. That's a great way to get it going. And then guess who? Judkins again. 1, 2, 3 for the transfer from Ole Miss. Will Howard roaring. And look, let's be honest, this Notre Dame team doesn't feel like they're necessarily equipped for a huge comeback. They're not built that way necessarily. Nobody told them that. Jaden Greathouse, tremendous play. Spins out of a tackle, and one of the heroes of the win over Penn State gets Notre Dame a little closer. They go for 2 and get it, 31-15. That's where we are early fourth. Emeka Egbuka on the run. Big time gain of 24, but then Notre Dame led the nation in turnovers this year. They forced more than anybody. They get the ball back. Tremendous job right there as the Irish still in the fight. It's 31-15. 3rd and goal, incomplete, as Greathouse has it knocked away by Jordan Hancock. Curious decision here to go for 3. And Mitch Jeter, the hero who made the field goal to beat Penn State, off the left upright. And so Marcus Freeman sees the decision to go for 3 backfire as they get none at all. That Ohio State defense in the red zone has been spectacular all season long. But then Notre Dame gets the ball back. There's Greathouse again. There's a flag on Ohio State. As you can see, he's clearly being interfered with. Only has one hand to make the catch. That's all he needs. He makes the grab. 31-21. Clearly, you can do the math at home. A 2-point conversion, you got to have it. Jordan Faison, he's got a man wide open in the back of the end zone. That's Bo Collins. And it's an 8-point game. It was 31-7. The Irish look done. No, they're not. But now, on 3rd and 11, throw it to 4. What a play as Howard dials it up to the freshman Jeremiah Smith. And the Buckeyes can sense that this is going to be a night to celebrate. Another look as Smith got single coverage, and that's just a mismatch against anybody. 29 had a rough night tonight, particularly when 4 went after him. But look, 4 is pretty tough to cover. See Maurice Claret celebrating. Ryan Day says, let me take this headset off before you crush me with the Gatorade. That was a direct hit. He doesn't give a bleep as they win the National Championship trophy presented by Dr. Pepper. Every team around the country spent all year in pursuit of that, to be a forever team. And that is what the Ohio State Buckeyes are as a result. of this playoff victory. They pick up yet another win against the AP Top 5. They break a tie with that juggernaut 2019 team from LSU. 1967 USC and 1943 Notre Dame for the most in a season since the debut of the AP poll era. 4 of those 5 victories came in the playoff. Chris Fowler, Kirk Herbstreit join us now. And men, this story can now be told, right? You guys heard it. Holly asked him about it. We've all heard Ryan Day say the story can only be told if we win tonight. Herbie, I'll let you start as a guy grew up there and wore the uniform. What's the story of this team?
Oh, don't start with me, man. I'm a little emotional. I'm just fired up for these guys. When I call these games, I'm incredibly objective, and I love all these Ohio State teams, but this team, because of what they went through to get to this point, you're just happy,
Yeah,
just
man.
happy for them.
We're all from somewhere, all right? Zero apologies for any of the emotion. I think it's all understandable. I'll ask Chris a question. Let you get yourself together.
It's seventh national title, 7th for Ohio State, but none of them have been won like this, Scott, as you said, right? So they win the first year of the 14 bracket, and they had to beat Alabama in New Orleans to do it, to beat Oregon. Now you come into this year, and off that low, to win a championship this way, to survive 4 rounds against 4 really high-quality teams. Yeah, they're expected to win, but you got to go out and handle business. And they played from the front most of the time. But to execute collectively and to still be standing, that's really the story. I mean, I don't know if they were written off. I mean, they were ripped apart by a lot of their own people in Columbus.
They went to hell and back. I mean, we can try to make this sound soft, but my thing is I talk to these players, I talk to these coaches. I know what they faced after that Michigan game. I know the pain, and I know that a lot of people thought, the hell with this guy. Who else can be the guy? And I know what that did. That's a real life thing, and to have to put that away and not be, like, who are you to question? Like, he just handled it, took the high road, didn't say anything, went out, got his team ready to play 4 games, and they won it. And I think that's why I'm emotional, is what these guys faced. And if you notice, they just kept talking about each other. They didn't talk about, anything else. It was each other. It was the coaches. It was because it was those guys in that locker room that believed that they could make this run. And I think that's what, 20 years from now, that's what I'll remember, is how they kept it together just by themselves and had to fight out of that dark hole that they were in. And it's pretty special to think. It's a great example for all of us to learn about adversity, and we want to quit. We want to give up. It's a great example, not just for football, but in life, about getting through the tough times, and the good times are coming ahead. And that's what this is.
I totally agree. And you feel so fortunate in this job that we have to do what we do anytime. But to be here on the sideline watching as that conversion happens and Smith catches the ball, throw the ball to 4, by the way, right? And you see JTT and Sawyer and the hugs and the real love, right? And I'm glad Rece asked about it, because they lean into faith, and the faith not just in God, but in one another. And I think you saw that reflected in this particular journey as they sing. I don't know if I'm supposed to lay out here, Herbie, or not, but maybe I will for just a moment.
Yeah. I know in Columbus they love this.
Might not have thought that they would be singing that song in this city tonight when they lost to Michigan, but here they are. Chris, if I could rewind the tape back to that emphatic opening drive, I think a lot of folks wondered, could Notre Dame stand toe-to-toe with this team? They showed us plenty to get here, but they suffered a number of injuries along the way, and were they built to stand up to Ohio State? And that first drive said, hey, we're here to fight But the answer from Ohio State with 3 consecutive touchdown drives in the first half was just remarkable. As you're calling it, what were you thinking throughout the first half?
Well, I've never seen an opening drive like that in any game. Forget a championship game. 9:45 off the clock against a tough defense. Right at Leonard, literally emptying the bucket at his guts. Just landing on the ball. He looked like he could barely stand up at the end of the drive. You thought, okay, that's a good opening statement. Right. But then Ohio State had every answer, and Notre Dame simply could not get off the field, could not get a third down stop. And that was, in their end, the demise as the lead built that was a little bit too big to make up for. Now, they battled back. I gave them no chance down 24 of even being in the game at the end. And they found a way to do that, and it took the call that, as Howard said post-game, took large Buckeyes from Chip Kelly to make that heave downfield. And Smith justified the faith, and so did Howard. But, Notre Dame, Scott, to just focus them for a second, it is Ohio State's night. It's a massive year for Notre Dame. They had never won a playoff game until this 3-game run. They had lost 9 consecutive New Year's Six bowls, not counting the embarrassment in this championship game against Alabama. They erased all that. They silenced some doubters. They went to SEC country, and they beat up the bullies from Georgia. I know for Notre Dame people, that meant a lot. They came up short tonight. Marcus Freeman will be disappointed that his team, in his words, didn't play their best early enough to hang with them and really give themselves a great chance to win. But there's no shame for me in the Irish for what they did this season.
Oh.
Lost one game 4.5 months ago by 2 points. It was an embarrassing loss. They responded brilliantly. They had plenty of adversity, a ton of injuries. So resolve and resilience on both sides tonight. Ohio State the better team and the deserving winner, but I do want to salute Notre Dame.
No, they were, Scotty, as you know, they're down 31-7 against this juggernaut, and not looking like they're going to slow down anytime soon. And they're going to be able to get a stop. Oh wow, they got a stop, which is like, okay, that's a starting point. Now you got to go score, and they did. And then they got the 2-pointer, and they just wouldn't go away. So that's culture. That's Marcus Freeman in just his 3rd year, what he's creating. I think he's scratching the surface of where this thing's going to go. So tough night. There'll be a lot of things. We could have done this or could have done that. But as far as what they're building in South Bend, well, I'm excited to see where this thing goes with him as the head coach. Well, and in the end, it did take some Buckeyes to throw it to 4, but what a play he makes. And they're going to lose, Herbie, a lot of this talent. The guys that stuck around that didn't have to. I think that's really the story of NIL and all the rest of this, is that you can come up with the dough that's required to keep guys that could go play on Sundays but wanted to leave a mark in Columbus. I want to give you the final word here about this team and what those guys that didn't have to stick around but did ultimately leave behind in Columbus. Yeah, that's exactly right. I think there was a narrative most of the year saying, well, they spent $20 million. They should win a championship. And if you really look close to it, a lot of the, you bring in Caleb Downs, you bring in Will Howard and Seth McLaughlin, but a lot of it had to do with the players that they really had on the roster, especially on defense. I mean, 9 of those starters have been around for 3 or 4 years. We've been calling their games forever. And they had a lot of great times, but I had a lot of tough moments. And I don't think this gets done as much as we're talking about Ryan Day, without those seniors and without all that they'd been through and the buy-in that they put together along with the coaches, this doesn't happen. So I think it's very fitting that they win this, but I think your point is outstanding to remember guys like Cody Simon and Jack Sawyer and JTT. It just goes Lathan Ransom. He keeps going on down the list of guys that they were determined to make this happen despite the pitfalls that they faced. And at the end of the day, they raised that trophy. Night belongs also, Scotty, to the Big Ten. Back-to-back national championships. That hadn't happened in consecutive seasons in like 80 years. Wow, 80 years. 80. So it's a power shift. We'll see if they can keep it going. But to come to home in the SEC and make it back-to-back for the Big Ten is important to a lot of people in that conference, I know. Yeah. Well, man, you know how much I appreciate your work, but even more the chance to be here together, Herbie. Thanks for the invite. They flew me down here on a plane so I could be here to do this with y'all. Y'all be good until next time. Here. Thank you. You're the man, buddy. Marcus Freeman and the Irish, they fought hard for 60. They come up just short.
Coach, what did you say to your team in the locker room?
It's not many words you can say when you got a group like that that's hurting. Just told them I love them, and I'm so proud to be a part of this season with them. There's a lot of guys that are hurting, but they gave it everything they had. We didn't get the job done tonight, and we got to figure out why, and there's reasons for it. But what they did for this school, this football program, and I think for people that watch college football, I think they send a strong message about being selfless, working your tails off, and putting others before yourself.
When you look back at the journey of this season, the adversity that your team faced, and they didn't blink, what will you be most proud of?
That they were selfless. It's a trait that I think will carry on for the rest of your life, to put others before yourself, and that's what they did during the toughest times. They chose Notre Dame and they chose each other, and we had some wonderful leaders that continue to preach that message, but it's going to be a special group that really have changed the trajectory of Notre Dame football.
Yeah, how do you think this run can propel this program forward?
There's high expectations. There always is, but hopefully more than anything, the people that come back next year understand the work that it takes to have success. There's a lot of work put into being the runners-up, but that's probably more than anything is that people now understand how hard it really is.
Thank you for your time, Coach.
All right, thank you.
Coach Emil McGrath, appreciate that. You see the end of the season, and unless you win, no one wants to have it end the way it did, but there's so much to be proud of. 14 victories, a program record, including 7 against AP-ranked teams, the most in the FBS. As far as the odds for next year, if you're curious about that, 15-1, 7th shortest according to ESPN bet, but we still got the portal. There'll be a ton of movement. That's the modern game that we now enjoy, and I think enjoy is what we do. SportsCenter on the road, presented by Geico, and I always look forward to this conversation with Rece Davis, but this time I get to shake your hand in person and say,
good to see you, man.
face to face. The mayor of college football and the host of the best show we've got is College Game Day. By the way, what a great year you had. Congrats.
Thank you.
As for the game we just saw, and let's start with Notre Dame because that's who we just heard from. You and I were just visiting a bit about that and what they did this season. Boy, they started like we're here to fight, but I just don't think as talented as they were, they measured up with Ohio State. Didn't have enough. What did Notre Dame show the country tonight if people were kind of curious what they've got?
I mean, it's sort of cliched, Scott, but they didn't quit. I sort of made a joke at halftime. I said maybe they should play running clock in the second half.
Felt that way.
Because it looked like it was over.
Yep.
And instead, they fought back with every fiber of their being. One of the things that we've talked about is how Marcus Freeman and this team have made Notre Dame likable to people who are in the middle. Typically, whenever you and I were growing up, you were either for Notre Dame or you were against them, and most of the people in the middle wound up being against them too. And instead, they're now an easy team to root for. And when you fight back the way they did and give yourselves a chance, it's a pretty remarkable thing. That's one of the dynamic young coaches in all of ball. And he's done a tremendous job at Notre Dame.
I think that what helps make them likable is that man. Coach Freeman is the man. He's the kind of guy you think, I wish he were my neighbor. I wish he dated my daughter. He's married quite happily. But I wish he coached my team.
Yes.
That's the kind of guy that he is. And he had a guy in Riley Leonard that I think you can say the same thing about. What an incredibly impressive young man. Will Howard gets to point to the ring finger, and he's right. Riley Leonard, a moment ago, the emotions land hard when the end of the road arrives.
Yeah, I'll start with just like the guys around me. Like, it's very easy to be a successful quarterback when, first and foremost, your coaches are just setting you up for success. I've never been so prepared in my life. I've just learned so much within this past year. And then the guys up front, I'll start with the offensive line. And these guys, from the day I got here, I kind of understood how special they were. And yeah, the O-line, and then the wideouts as well. Every single one of those guys, you look at our offense, and a lot of people want to describe us as a rushing offense, and I'm, probably labeled as a rushing quarterback sometimes, but these guys don't budge. They do their job. They smile. They're all about team glory, and when their time comes, they always make plays for me. In the backfield with Jay Love and all those guys, how could I not become a better player on the field? And then off the field, you could walk into that locker room, and every single one of those people you're going to leave impressed by if you just had a simple conversation with them. The character of this place is kind of hard to describe. And I think I've grown so much just because of the people around me.
That's the good stuff right there.
Yeah, man.
An impressive young man.
Yeah,
he's made of the right stuff.
He is a great guy. And there's so many of them on both of these teams. You're around the players, and I was really, really impressed with a lot of the Ohio State players this year when you got a chance to spend time one-on-one with them. And the same is true for Riley, who I've known since he was at Duke. And, he's got a great family. And he's a great leader for Notre Dame. And there's a lot of ceiling there, Scott. He didn't have any time in the offseason coming off the ankle surgery and some of the setbacks he had to really get in rhythm with his teammates. He has some more room to grow as a quarterback. I think he's a tremendous athlete and a great leader, and the future is really bright for him.
He's a faith-based guy. So is Will Howard. So is that Ohio State team. I was glad you asked about that because they've talked so much about that and how much they leaned into faith. But then ultimately, because I had a coach that used to say the other team prays too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It comes down to being able to do it on the field. And I think that's what impressed me most about Ohio State is they had a bunch of guys that could have left, right? The portal allows you to stay. And they're going to be well rewarded. They're going to be drafted high. But it seems that both faith in above and faith in one another is what got Ohio State through. As you talk to them, what did they share about that?
That was something Emeka Ibuka and I talked about this when I went to visit with Ryan Day and several of the players before the Tennessee game, a few days before that. And, look, we hear a lot of times people talk about their faith and people sort of dismiss it. These guys were sharing their faith and reaching out and baptizing guys on campus, not just football teammates. And it became something powerful to them, not because they thought it was going to be handed to them to win a game, but it changed their relationships, and it changed selfishness and made it go away. It was impactful for them. Didn't mean they were going to guarantee they were going to win. And Notre Dame had a lot of that going on as well.
Of course.
You heard Marcus talk about that a lot this year, that it made guys selfless. And I think that's the power in it. It's not, some magical thing they're going to go down and hand you the trophy if you do it. It just helps you maybe relate to your teammates differently.
And isn't that interesting now in this era where like there's a ton of money out there, and by the way, the players ought to participate in it because they're making billions. 100%. You and I have always agreed about that. But in an era where you think, this guy's just going there for money, both these guys went there, and the portal quarterbacks, and they got their dough.
Sure.
But I think that there's to hear about the relationships that they have with one another, and how that is forged, and then how you ultimately see it on the field. I think that's really a wonderful story to kind of offset the idea that everyone just goes somewhere because of money. Because I'll admit, I've been guilty of just saying you only go there for the dough. I think Ohio State, they kind of get it both ways because you get your money, which you earn, but then you get a whole hell of a lot more than that, which lasts far more than the dough.
And sometimes that's a really elusive thing to capture. And they were able to do it. And Notre Dame was able to do it. Ohio State was able to do it, and I think it's also sort of ironic. Those two quarterbacks know each other well. They roomed together at the Manning Passing Academy.
Yeah, that story
in the
told,
offseason.
yeah.
So it's a couple of guys who are great leaders. You and I watched Will Howard play at Kansas State for several years.
I thought he was just a runner. I didn't know he was going to be a 12 for 13 for 13 in a national championship kind of guy.
I know it. How about and Pat McAfee's been the guy saying, why is no one talking about him as being a good NFL quarterback, a guy who could develop into one? I think he's shown a lot of goods over this playoff.
Certainly feels draftable at the very least, and what he put on tape tonight was awfully impressive. But I'm interested in where your perspective of Ryan Day is, because the Michigan game seems to have taken so much. How do I say this? It occupies so much real estate in their mentals that I think it's almost debilitating.
I 100% agree, Scott.
I said with Steve on the podcast we do that if you give that day permission to mean the other 364 don't mean anything, I think that is ridiculous, and I think that's just, it's almost toxic, especially if you don't win it. But in the go ahead.
No, please go ahead.
But I wonder moving forward. No one's going to say Michigan Ohio State doesn't mean anything. Of course it does. But if you can lose that game and then win 4. You know what's cooler than gold pants? A gold trophy. And they just won one.
Yeah. I think you're exactly right. Because what's happened is it's fun for it to seem like it means everything until it's not fun anymore. And when you have this thing, he was 67-10 before this playoff or whatever, and they said, we're going to fire him, he can't beat Michigan. And, it was nonsense. And it got in their heads, too. But, and I even wondered, it's something I want to talk to Ryan about at some point in the offseason. They've got all of that stuff in the Woody Hayes building. Countdown, the rivalry, all that stuff. Maybe you don't need to do that. You know, I think there has to be a happy medium between his buddy Chip Kelly's nameless, faceless opponent, which, by the way, I love Chip, never believed that. That's not true. It's not a nameless, faceless opponent all the time. But it can't be all about we've got to beat Michigan, because this is case in point that it's nice to beat Michigan. You should want to beat Michigan. You should not like Michigan if you're at Ohio State.
Sure.
But you don't have to. Right. All this confetti here is still scarlet and gray.
No doubt. I know we got to go, but I just the one last. I got one chance to talk to the guy face to face. I have one last just quick thought about what this result is, because a lot's made of how much money Ohio State spent, and they did. But it's not like they were alone. There's plenty of people in the deep end of the pool throwing a lot of dollars around. Okay, it was a big number, and in the end, they're gonna have the confetti, and they're gonna be able to celebrate it forever. I'm not asking the dollars question as much as the blueprint question. I think we're seeing it at Penn State. You go to guys that matter and you say, can you stay a while? You're not going to be able to keep number 11 or number 44 up in Happy Valley. They're going to go, and they should. But do you think we'll see players that are in a similar place as a Sawyer or a JTT look at one another and go, let's run it back. Let's get our money, but let's run it back. Is this a somewhat repeatable blueprint elsewhere?
I think it all depends on your culture. And I know that, too, is an overused word that make people roll their eyes. But if you have that type of camaraderie and spirit on your team, then it can work. And if you find that magic chemistry that Ohio State did this year, it can certainly work. And, you know, people have made a lot about the dollar figures for Ohio State. From the word that we're hearing around, they're going to have to raise some more money because people are up in the ante because, you know, it's going to keep going up until this thing sort of gets stabilized somehow.
Until some guardrails are put in place.
Of some type, yeah. And I think you're going to have to collectively bargain and all that, but it's another night to talk about that. But,
sure.
It's I think it is repeatable if you have the right people, the right leadership, not only in the coaching room, but also on the team.